And it appears we are live. What's up, everybody? It is Mr. Drew, here to welcome you to another episode of the Andrew Glowczewski Experience. This is going to be episode 254. Going to continue these prop studies. We're moving on to grenade launchers, or we moved on to grenade launchers in the last stream, and we're going to continue that today. Um, and yeah, man, just more heavy metal. This is going to be a simple one, simple and quick one. It seems like. Oh shit! Giant lizard just crawled across my screen. um, and yeah, man, that's what we're gonna be doing today. Man, I'm loving this light. I even when I had to adjust because I'm back on the left side of the sketchbook again, and it's usually more difficult. I don't know, man. Today it seems all good. I got the new light going and super bright. I love it. Oh man, why didn't I do it sooner? Anyways, yeah, let's just get into this one, man. This one doesn't have too much craziness to it or anything like that. Um, so yeah, well, let's just get into it. I got a comic book girl, 19, and she just started her God Emperor Dune Club, which is the fourth installation. It's of her covering the Dune book series. I guess she's done over the past few years or something like that. And I recently went back and watched her third session and the second session. I didn't watch the first just because you know, I'm listening to the first audiobook and all that other stuff. Like the movie's coming out, the second one I think got greenlit. Like we're gonna get the first book, in all of its glory. In the movies and everything like that. I can always read the book in the future if I really wanted to. I don't need to go back and watch that. I watched plenty of stuff on it. And then but yeah, I watched your second one, Dune Messiah, and then most the best one and the latest one until now was the third one, Children of Dune, covering like the second and third generations of the Atreides family, and their whole squabble. And now, and I love that one. That one was so cool because it clarified so much for me. And then now she's covering God Emperor Dune, and I'm like caught up, so I'm catching these things as they come out. Um, and yeah, this is the first breakdown of whatever first few chapters or whatever. Um, and I guess she's already on like chapter 3. Holy shit. So I just got done listening to it. It's a 45-minute video on YouTube. But, you know, I guess even though this is following uh, Paul's uh, grandkid? Yeah, Paul's kid, or Leto's grandkid, also named Leto. Um, I said on a previous stream, like, oh, it's simple to follow. It's just three generations of a family, which is true. It is just three generations of a family. But this fourth book, God Emperor Dune, takes place, according to her, 3,500 years after the fact. So basically, a lot of the main cast from the first three books are all dead and gone, with acceptance to Duncan, Idaho, for reasons that will be explained, unless she's already explained it. And yeah, I'm just re-listening to it immediately, just because it's like, oh man, 3,500 years, a lot has changed, a lot's going on. So it's not like picking up where the last one left off. It's kind of like jumped ahead to where everything has led up to, and now this is just the current state of things, and things are a lot different. So just let's let that rock.
But his legs have become his weird vestigial flippers that have kind of like grown back on his body. And he rolls around on his royal cart made by the Ixians. So he's got like a little royal cart that he rolls around on. It's pretty cool. They also made him a machine that he uses to write his memoirs called a dictatel, where whenever he just thinks, hey, turn on and start recording my memories, it starts recording his memories and starts typing it out on this crystal paper that's like 1 molecule thick. Like paper that's like 1 molecule thick. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's out of control, but whatever. He knows that Siona stole a couple of copies of the journal. It was on shittier paper, though. It wasn't on the good paper. And he watched her run away with them, but he did
Not on the good paper.
interfere with her or the D-Wolves. And he did not foresee her stealing them, but honestly, he doesn't care. And he's glad that she survived. He would let her die, because he could breed another candidate, but she's really special to him. So he's willing to let it go. And he states at the end of this chapter that Leto's purpose is to be the greatest predator ever known. Greatest predator ever known. And in nature, predators are regulators. I mean, a lot of us think, oh, predators, they're bad or they're evil or something like that. But in fact, they're needed to maintain balance among organisms. They create diversity and they strengthen their prey both through natural selection and by forcing their prey to develop anti-predator adaptations. So that's what he's doing. He wants to whip humanity into shape, and he is doing that through becoming the greatest predator ever. That's his function. So let's move on to chapter 4. We've got the Welbeck fragment. Here we go. So now we have met the rebel mutant Siona. Let's meet her dad, Maneo Atreides. So,
Oh, are we
her
like
boss,
super crooked?
They're having a conversation.
Let's straighten
and Maneo
that.
is Leto's
And
right
straighten
hand,
that.
like his head servant and
we
his
go.
number one stand. So we have this real fun
There we go.
interplay between the dad and the daughter. The daughter who hates Leto, and the dad who's totally committed to this guy. And they're arguing about him, and it's funny because Leto has just said, "I'm the greatest predator ever known," and Siona's just like, "This guy is a stone cold killer. Leto's killer. He's a killer, Dad." And Maneo is like, it's not really him. It's not really him. I mean, sure, like the worm kills, but it's not Leto who's doing it. Like sometimes, like he's killed like 9 Duncans, dude. She's like, it's not like that, okay? You gotta separate the art from the artist, okay? You gotta separate the art from the artist. She's having a real hard time with it. She's not really buying it. And she asks him, well, how are you not dead yet? Because everybody who hangs out with this guy ends up dead. And he says, well, when I see the big worm coming, I get the fuck out. That's what I do. And that's how I stayed alive. She's still not buying it, but he's like, I said what I said. So not only do we have Leto kind of versus Siona, even though Leto's on Siona's team, she's vowed revenge against him, and then you have Maneo who's like torn in between these two people, this poor guy. Now we have chapter 5. This is Duncan's last day, and this was my favorite chapter in this session.
This is so
so
trippy.
much to discuss, so many laughs, so many good things. The header starts off again. Leto is telling us about himself, what it's like to be this mutated worm god, and he's not only is he seemingly invulnerable and prescient, his senses are so sharp. His vision, his hearing, his sense of smell. He says it would horrify you what I can detect by smell alone. It would horrify you. You'd freak out. You don't want to know what I know about you just from you walking and I can smell you, which is amazing. And later that is echoed in the chapter where Duncan's odor preceded him. The man was high on his own adrenaline, so when this new Duncan comes in, he can immediately smell this guy's just like, he's all fucked up on the adrenaline. So another thing that's really fun about this chapter is the crypt. We have a few scenes in the crypt in this book, and it is a huge underground situation. There's a big hub in the middle, and it's hard to even grasp how big it is. It's so large, and it's radiating spokes like a wheel. each of these giant spokes are catacombs for the products of the Atreides breeding line since the Dune times. So you've got people's bones, people's water. You've got some spice to fool people who, potential raiders who think that this might be the storehouse. There are also false walls. There's mad tunnels underneath this that nobody knows about. Like Leto installed these tunnels himself. And he loves this place because he's a worm. And worms like to tunnel underground. And I love that he loves this place. It's like, of course you do. Of course you love your worm tunnels under the earth because you're a worm. And I got such a kick out of it. We've also got an angry Duncan walking into Leto's crypt like a fly into a spider's web. Leto has already been tipped off by the guild that this Duncan has been told that a new Duncan is being prepared by Glowczewski, and he's afraid that he's getting ready to be replaced, and the Ixians have given him a laser gun. So, here we go. We had a Duncan Idaho Gola in the last book. This is the newest Duncan Idaho Gola. And by the way, the guild will snitch on anyone threatening the spice production. Well, not production, but anyone threatening the spice, because they know that if Leto dies away from water, there will be no more spice ever. No more spice. No more guilt. So they're not really allies, but they're definitely on the side of spice. So they'll definitely snitch. And I love that Leto reflects on an earlier Duncan's death, and their exchange is really great. Leto says that chance is the nature of our universe, which is one of my favorite quotes from this chapter. And Duncan says, not chance, mischief. You're the author of mischief. And Leto says, mischief is the most profound pleasure. It's in the ways we deal with mischief that we sharpen creativity. And that harkens back to the greatest predator statement. He is mischievous. He is causing some issues for humanity by taking over and ruling as a worm god for 3,500 years. It's a big problem. Like, humans aren't really into it. They're not really into it. But he's doing this because he wants to sharpen humanity's creativity.
It's funny, now that we have the movie coming out, I'm just going to pause that for a second. Now that we have the movies coming out, and we have an actor playing, or actors playing these roles, I just imagine, at least for the roles that we do have actors for, that, I put them in the position of, me listening to these things and audiobooks and her breakdowns and things like that. And I'm just getting a kick out of Duncan Idaho being played by Jason Momoa and his role in the story, in the series, and everything like that, and how his character is one that kind of follows through every single story from beginning to end for the most part, and how, at least now in the movie, the Hollywood aspect that Jason Momoa got cast into that, and it's like imagining him, the first book is going to cover 2 movies, and everything gets a trilogy these days. So Dune Messiah is going to happen. I forget if he's in that movie or in that book or not, because well, I don't want to spoil anything, but he probably is. If he isn't, whatever. But then in the 3rd book, he gets his return, and for Jason Momoa to come back, let's say 6-8 years from now when they film that movie, Children of Doom, if they ever even get to that point, and if Jason Momoa would still be up to the task. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be, but like to see all that stuff happen, and to imagine everything that happened, it's like, okay, now I get to imagine Jason Momoa in this position of this character and his role in the story and everything that he does, and like I said, I already listened to her breakdown once, and she kind of breaks it down comically, and I love it. So it's just funny for me to sit there and put Jason Momoa's face on this commentary of at least Duncan Idaho's role in everything here. And yeah, man, I just think throw that out there, so while you listen to it or consider the same things, be like, oh my god, this actually is hilarious, and I would love to see like her comical breakdown Like if this was to make it into film, a film adaptation, like to see these scenes break down as a comedy. Oh my god.
It's back out of him. You're not even human anymore. He gives him a little burn. And like the closest that Leto can come to anger is irritation. And he is irritated. He's just like that's the he's like, fuck you. Like, I know I'm not human, okay? Like it sucks. Like I don't want to be here either. Like poor Leto. But then Leto comes back with your life is becoming a cliche. Telling a Gola, and there's been hundreds of Golas by this. I mean, like maybe thousands of Golas by this point. Like he's had so many fucking Duncans, and he's just like, your life is becoming a cliche. Like that's such an amazing sick burn. Um, and Duncan reveals a bomb. He's got a bomb. He's got a bomb. And Leto is so pumped because he did not foresee this, and he loves surprises. That's how bored he is. He loves surprises so much, even if they might threaten his life. But he knows that he's fine. Like a bomb isn't going to do anything. Duncan is like, well, you haven't predicted this, and you haven't predicted your death, so this is going to kill you. So you should be afraid. And Leto's like, it's not, baby. It's not even gonna like do anything. I'm so sorry. And then it fucking goes off prematurely and kills the duck. Duck is like trying to get rid of it, and then it just like blows up in his face. Like I was dying. I was laughing so hard reading that. But now he comes to the current Duncan. The current Duncan Gola is coming into the mix, and Duncan and Leto play reports or lays gun. What is it gonna be? Is it gonna be more reports or is it gonna be the latest gun? He knows he's got it. He sees it in his fucking briefcase. He's like, oh, it's heavy. It's in there. I know he's got the gun. And Duncan first chooses reports. We go through a few reports. First report is, what are we gonna do about Sienna? You know, she stole some shit. I don't even know what she stole. And Lego's like, oh, it was the plans for the Citadel. And he's like, what? How could you let her get away with that? And he's like, no, you let her get away with it. And I was like, oh man, he is just, Leto's got those sick burns for people. Like he is just ready to fuck somebody up. I was cracking up. Then too, they talk about a cult of Alia that's been found on Gidi Prime. And Leto is so amused. Again, he's like, doesn't even care. Like all these problems, he's just like, it's amusing to him. He's like, oh, this is just a revival of ISIS, and I just think it's lovely how they've united my grandmother and my aunt into a single goddess, and I just think that's so cute. And but really, it's a bit of desperate cover for looking for undiscovered Harkonnen spice words. So move on, Duncan. What else you got for me? He's getting bored. He's getting really bored. And Leto gets so bored by Duncan's reports about the rebels that he zones out, which is relatable content. As I zone out. I am guilty of zoning out when people are talking about boring shit. I've done it. I do it. And he begins reflecting on all these repetitive conversations that he's had with Duncans about rebels. And we get some really awesome ideas about rebellion. I really enjoyed this part a lot. I'm just going to read. I kind of put all of his rebellion quotes together into one thing, and I just want to repeat them because I was just like, they were just like blowing my mind when I was reading them. All rebellions are ordinary and an ultimate bore. They are copied out of the same pattern, one much like another. The driving force is adrenaline addiction and the desire to gain personal power. All rebels are closet aristocrats. That's why I can convert them so easily. Radicals are only to be feared when you try to suppress them. You must demonstrate that you will use the best of what they offer. This is their weakness. Radicals always see matters in terms which are too simple. Black and white, good and evil, them and us. Oh my gosh, it's so true. And by addressing complex matters in this way, they rip open a passage for chaos. The art of government, as you call it, is the mastery of chaos. Chaos is no surprise. It has predictable characteristics. For one thing, it carries away order and strengthens the forces at the extremes. They're creating new extremists, new radicals, and they are just continuing an old process. There has never been a truly selfless rebel, just hypocrites. Conscious hypocrites and unconscious hypocrites. It's all the same. It's all the same. It doesn't And I was just like, ah. And it's like, well, what about a radical who sees the complexity and comes at you that way? I was like, that's not a radical, Duncan. That's a rival for leadership, bro. And you either co-opt them, you join them, or you kill them. That's it. That's how you deal with it. And Leto becomes so lost in thought that Duncan catches him napping. He catches him off guard and pulls the laser gun on him. And I just love it when like Leto comes to him. He's like, oh shit! Like Duncan's got the laser gun. Like, oh, he caught me napping. And of course Duncan goes to how many of me have there been? They're obsessed with this question. I get it. I would probably ask the same fucking question. And Leto hits him with the sad Muad'Dib voice and then the mad Muad'Dib voice because that usually like quells Duncan. But then, and he falters a minute. When he falters, he just literally hits him with his giant worm body, much to Duncan's surprise. Duncan's never seen him off the cart, had no idea he could jump and roll around like that. Is totally caught off guard and is crushed to death. And another thing about this chapter that you need to remember, other great things about this chapter is we find out Leto has taken away the Bene Gesserit's breeding program, and also does not allow artificial manipulation of human genetics by the Glowczewski. He runs the breeding program, and the Duncans sometimes act as a stud. So he breeds the Duncans back into the into the program, and he does it for their mongrel strength and as a genetic throwback to act as a fire dampener. Leto really wants to breed a Duncan with Siona. He was hoping that maybe it was going to be this Duncan, but obviously that's not going to work out. We also get more deets on Leto's empire. There is no interest and no credit allowed. He got rid of the whole bullshit credit banking system crap that just keeps all of us in such bondage. It's like, I'm just like, I love it. Like, you just, if you want something, you just gotta pay for it. You just gotta pay for it. And there's only one coinage in the empire. It's got his face on it. And it's based purely on the spice standard. So instead of the gold standard, there's the spice standard. And it just keeps getting more and more valuable. And it's so valuable, in fact, that you can carry the price of an entire planet in your hand luggage. That's like, it's like, oh, billions of dollars, pallets of whatever. No. It's just coins. And so because of that, because coinage is so insanely high, most people trade. I feel like that's really what's going on. He's like, nope, you gotta trade, and there's no interest. And I love it. I love that there's no credit allowed in Leto's empire. And he thinks to himself, control the coinage and the courts, let the rabble have the rest. That's how you control people. That's how we're controlled. There's also some more details on Leto's body. So he tells us he can crawl or roll or toss his body with astonishing speed. And we also see that. So I love that he tells us and then he shows it to us. But that sometimes he falls on his flippers. He's got those little weird vestigial feet flippers. And sometimes it hurts. It hurts if he falls on one of those fucking things. And Duncan, in fact, gets one with his laser gun. And it hurts. It hurts. But it's fine. You know, it's like it's singed off. It immediately heals itself. It's not that big of a deal. And another thing that I really liked about Leto, another weird little detail about him, is that he has to act out a sigh. Like, he doesn't breathe. Like, he doesn't have, like, lungs, you know? Like, his body's just, I don't know what the fuck's going on in there, but he doesn't have to, he doesn't have to sigh. But he has to act one out. Just as dramatic effect for the Duncan. It's like, it's so cute. And I love that he can blink his whole face. So he's got that cowl around his face, and apparently it can just like that. Like if he thinks he's like something's trying to go for him, he can just blink his face, which I'm like, I would love to see that. And also, his brain is no longer associated with his face. So the Duncan was aiming for his head, but his brain are now nodal congeries throughout his body. So it's not even like he doesn't even have a human brain anymore. It's just like a bunch of weird nodes throughout his body. Like there's nothing there.
Nardachi! Lurking and working.
Yeah, so we learned so much in this chapter. It was such a fun chapter. Like I said, I laughed out loud.
Hell yeah.
More than once. And let's go on to chapter 6, Leto's weakness. So now,
Trying
we
to hammer out
learn
these scopes.
nigh invulnerable. We also know that he does, go at some point because we have these
Yeah,
people.
it's funny. Something I was thinking about yesterday while I was working on these things, because I was working on a grenade launcher yesterday also, and I was thinking about how a grenade launcher functions, and they're kind of like mortars where you actually have to like aim them, like kind of upwards. Got to angle it. Like you can't shoot it straight. I mean, unless you're aiming to shoot short and have it hit, just fall down. So you have to like prop it upwards, or and depending on like the angle, much like a mortar, um, you know, either way, you got to angle it. So I'm like, what are these scopes for? Like I'm looking at these designs and I'm like, they got scopes on a grenade launcher. I was like, what purpose? Because if you're angling the gun and then you have to look through the scope that's on top, is like you're looking at the sky, not the target. And it's just weird. I think it's a little nonsensical that there's scopes on a grenade launcher like this, because I don't know, you have to kind of read. I don't know. Anyways, hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, so I just gotta X out these scopes for these things, or for this one at least. Exactly. So imagine if you're like shooting water from a hose, and you like a scope isn't gonna help you, because if you're looking through the scope, you're just like staring at above whatever it is that you're trying to water. Yeah, it's weird. Why though? But why?
Anymore. But we're back at Rebel headquarters, and we meet Nyla. And
Okay,
Nyla is
so
this muscular brick of a woman who is charged to obey Siona in all things by her god Emperor Leto, and she works as a spy for him. And she's really uncomfortable with this arrangement because Siona's a rebel, and she's always asking her to do shit that she like really doesn't agree with and really doesn't want to do, but because she promised, she's gonna do it because she loves God. She loves Leto. That's all there is to it. And she is sending a secret transmission on an Ixian device. She's also had something implanted in her brain so that Leto could contact her like brain to brain, but it hasn't happened yet. And fun fact, I just want to mention that Frank Herbert is really into onesies. He's really into onesies and unitards. She's wearing a onesie. Siona and her rebel crew are wearing onesies. Like so many, like in the next books, like everyone's wearing a onesie. I just feel like I love that Frank Herbert thinks like onesies are the fashion of the future. Like that's what we should be wearing is unitards. Like fuck you guys.
oh yeah, rompers and shit.
I'm just like And the thing I like onesies, but you have to really have your shit together to wear one because if you're out of shape at all, onesies don't look good on everybody. And even like I won't wear one unless I'm like really got it going on at the moment. Another thing that I like about Frank Herbert, and I've noticed, is that he loves concealed technology. He loves to conceal it. He doesn't want to see a button or a light switch or anything or a panel. Everything's always like concealed, which I'm like, aesthetically, yeah, I agree. I mean, it would be cool if you could have a house and you just like, oh, you're done with your TV, it's just concealed behind a wall. Now you don't have to look at it anymore. I think that'd be pretty cool. So anyways, Nyla is done with her transmission. She meets up with Siona and her bitch ass assistant named Topri. And Siona grills Nyla on why Nyla obeys her, even though she doesn't always agree with her. Like Siona's, she's like the head of the breeding program, of Leto's breeding program. So like she's pretty advanced. She's a smart cookie. And she's like, I know that you don't agree with me, but like, why, why do you do whatever I ask you to do? And Nyla's like sweating it. She's like, oh fuck, like I have to answer truthfully. She's gonna know if I don't tell the truth, but then I don't wanna be known, I don't wanna reveal that I'm a spy. So she says, I have sworn to God that I will obey you, which is true. But Siona takes it in a totally different direction and is like, I knew it, you're a believer and I'm a believer, and like that's what unites us. And I love that Topri laughs and then Siona roasts him and is like, you don't believe in anything, Topri, not even yourself. And I was just thinking, wow, I want to burn someone with that one day. I was like, I want to use that on somebody. I was like, you don't believe in anything, not even yourself. You know, like what a sick burn. But Nyla believes, Siona's like, I believe that's what holds us together. And I thought it was really interesting that she's saying this to Topri because this echoes Leto earlier talking about the Ixians, how the Ixians believe in their technology, they believe in their science, they are true believers. And because Leto, he doesn't believe in the same things, he doesn't believe in their technology or their science, he believes in his golden path. But because they're both believers, they got something going on. Like it bonds them together, which I thought was really interesting to see, like Siona kind of saying the same thing. And Nyla is she's so relieved. She thinks to herself, I may speak the truth, and it works only for my God. And this just proves to her that God Emperor Leto is like magic. He's God. He's God. She said the truth, and it worked out fine. She had faith. She took the leap. It worked out. It only goes to prove to her that yes, Leto is God. Siona goes on to share the discoveries that she found pressed between the pages of the stolen journal. And there is a strand of Ganima's hair, Leto's sister, and a starflower blossom, and a poem of mourning that Leto wrote when he heard that she had died. And Siona discovers, puts it all together, and it's like, oh my God, he loved his sister. He loved somebody. He's capable of love. That's his weakness. His weakness is his capacity for love, and I'm gonna use it against him. And like, she's so fucking crazy, but she's right. But she had no idea. She had no idea. And that's the thing. It's like, man, he may be like a god worm, but like he's still human. There's still part of his human in there. There's still part of it. Like, why are people thinking he can't love? Like, I don't get it. But whatever. She figures it out. And it is nice that Garima just kind of had a nice long life, a nice long life. And it's sad though that he was like so bummed when she died. So let's move on to chapter 7, Clean Up in the Crypt. So we listened to the first of many conversations between Leto and his main man, Mineo, who is a lean machine. He is efficient, he is organized. Leto's even accused him of being manufactured by the Ixians because he's just so efficient. And he comes to clean up the dead Duncan, of which there have been many during his lifetime. This isn't the first dead Duncan he's had to clean up. And fun fact, only 19 of all the Duncans that ever have been created have died natural deaths, which I thought was really funny. Like, oh, those Duncans, they're wild. They're wild, those Duncans. So first they get down to business. Before Mineo removes the body, he's instructed to disable the lace gun so that Leto can present it to the Ixian ambassador. So he's gonna Leto's gonna be like, I know you trying to get me killed. Like, what do you think about this? I'm like, fuck with the Ixians. And he's like, give the guild snitch 10 grams of spice and let our people on Gedi Crime know that there's a Harkonnen spice hoard around, and I need you to find it. I need you to beat the Bene Gesserit to it, and then I need you to use it to pay off the Leilaxu for our new Duncan, and the rest you just put here. And then they move on to family. Mineo is torn. He loves his daughter Siona. He loves her. He's her father. But his duty to the God Emperor comes first. And we find out that Topri is Mineo's agent. And we already knew that guy was sus. Everyone knows Topri is sus, but now it's confirmed he's Mineo's agent. And Leto is just so pumped for Siona and her mutation, which is the ability to fade from prescient view, even though she herself is not prescient. So she is an entirely new model of human. Her father has no idea about this talent of hers. But this is exactly what Leto's been looking for. And again, when we were talking about he wants to be the greatest predator ever known, that is an anti-predator adaptation. So she has finally, somebody has adapted to where you have a human who cannot be seen. She fades. Sometimes she's there, sometimes she's not. But she's not always there, and it makes her a wild card. Then we go in and talk about the pharaonic disease. Leto says, I have seen people and their fruitless societies in such repetitive posturing that their nonsense fills me with boredom. He is so bored. He is bored by everything and everyone. He's seen it all. It's really boring. And Leto's job is to break humanity out of the repetitive posturing of the pharaonic disease, where you have powerful tyrants who are produced by the shared myth of government that was broadcast by the ancient Romans. So he's like, okay, humanity, you love strong leaders, you love strong government, you pray for God to come down and like fix everything. Oh yeah, you guys, is that what you guys want? Is that what you guys want? Well, check me out. I'm all those things, bitch. I'm all those things. See how you like it. And humanity doesn't like it. And Leto's kind of giving humanity that approach where, like, say you want to quit smoking. And so you decide to smoke so many cigarettes in a row that you throw up and become sick. You just chain smoke until you just feel totally disgusted. And you become so disgusted that you never want to smoke cigarettes again. That's how he's trying to bust humanity out of the pharaonic disease. He's like, I'm going to give you strong leadership, and we're just going to do this for a long time. We're gonna have a big old government, and we're going to give you so much of that you're never going to want to do it again. You never want to do it again. You're not going to want to do this ever again. You're never going to want an emperor ever again, ever. And it's really cute. Then he goes on to think about how armies are the means by which governments take hold, and in their ignorance, they tend to unleash powerful technologies that they are not capable of competently managing, which cause major problems when these technologies inevitably escape into the public, eventually trickling down into the hands of the individual, and that in humanity's hatred towards the other, we create the instruments of our own undoing, like everyone's undoing. So I was like, oh, that's some nice thoughts there. We'll get more in armies later in the book. So let's go to our final chapter, Duncan's first day. So we got a new Duncan. Clean up the old Duncan. We got a new one. He's fresh out of the oven. And the header in this one, again, he's talking about how boring everything is. I assure you that the ability to view our futures can become a bore. Even to be thought of as a god, as I certainly was, can become ultimately boring. It has occurred to me more than once that holy boredom is good and sufficient reason for the invention of free will. And I love that header so much because it reminds me of this Alan Watts lecture that I was listening to where he was talking about how, we are a God who's dreaming. He's just, because we're just so bored, like a God who's all powerful, who can have anything and do anything and is omniscient and everything and everywhere. It's boring. And so, he just made himself forget and just dreams that, we're all these separate little people and, that's for fun. Because it's boring. It's boring to be everything. So we get our fresh new Duncan, and he arrives on Arrakis, and he is intercepted by two women of the Imperial Guard. One lady named Luli, and the other one is masked, named the Friend. And they have to make sure that he hasn't been tampered with by the dirty Leilaxu. People really don't like the Leilaxu. And, I mean, if you follow along with the next two books, you'll find out why. You'll just be like, oh yeah, that is pretty fucked. They're pretty gross. And this poor dazed Duncan is just trying to wrap his brain around the fact that he died 3,500 years ago, that Paul's son has become a weird worm god, that there's fanatical women in the Imperial Guard. He's like, women? And they're fanatics? Like, what is this? He's supposed to command the Royal Guard. So I was just like, oh, okay, like, whatever. And then training of Mentats has been banned. So that's another thing Leto's taken out of the system. And also, he thinks if he's just one in a long line of Duncan Golas, what happened to his predecessor? And he finds all of this to be very sus. He is not really into all of this. It's kind of freaking him out, and I'd be freaked out too. I totally get it. So, so that's it for our first session. For our
So now, in a recent squad hour,
Man, before we get into the next one, it's the next video I have up there is Dope Spill Comics on YouTube, and he's just talking about the comic book What If, and there's one out there of Spider-Man kills the universe or something like that, kills the Marvel universe. So it's like some sort of almost like a Deadpool kills the universe, but it's Spider-Man instead. Anyways, before we get into that, just that thought about the whole Duncan thing. Duncan on, oh my god, I'm doing the wrong thing here. Duncan, Idaho, it's 3,500 years into the future, so that's thousands of years. Obviously, that's, hundreds of lifetimes into the future, and there's been that many Duncans. Um, you know, I think they said 19 of them, only 19 of them died from natural causes, which, even if they lived 100 years, that's 1,900 years out of, let's say 3,500 years. That's still, what, 1,600 years that's unaccounted for. And for, in those 1,600 years, there've been who knows how many Duncans that got killed by one means or another. And it's part of it, I think, is to speak on, like, well, who is Duncan, what's his origin, and what does he represent, and things like that. And he's like the sword of the Atreides. He's the number one swordsman, while Gurney Halleck is like the number one soldier. Duncan Idaho is like the number one like swordsman, or kind of like a samurai, like serve, warrior server, sort of representative of his time. And letting it be played by Jason Momoa is to speak on like, these are the heroes. This is the hero guy. This is Aquaman. This is, the bruiser, the badass, everything like that. And there's that line she was talking about where it's like, you've become a cliche. Your life has become a cliche. And it's to speak on like, it's funny that the game No More Heroes came out because it's kind of like that, where it's like, there's you're a relic of the past. Like Duncan, Idaho, by the time we get here is like a relic of the past, and his story in this book seems to be one, even in the last one when he was the first Gola, the original Gola version, the original comeback, the first comeback of Duncan, where this is like, who knows, the hundreds or thousands of comebacks later. He still has the mind of the sword of Atreides that he was, hundreds, thousands of years ago. Like that's still where his mind state is. And that's kind of like his baby format, like how we're born and we're a baby and we're this clean slate. His clean slate is, I'm the sword of the Atreides. And then he gets to experience what, the Atreides grandchild has done with the universe at this point. I believe Duncan dies before he gets to even see Paul overthrow before Paul even gets to overthrow the Emperor. So he doesn't even see that. So it's like he has to jump through so many hurdles of understanding of the difference in societies and everything like that. And I believe, at least from a storytelling point of view, that it's Duncan's role is to be us. He's us. Like here we are reading this in the, in the 20th century of our universe, and we have to sit there and try to imagine, or Frank Herbert, the author, has to try to explain to us in one way or another. Like, this is the world, this is the setting, this is how crazy shit is over here, and the only way that he can explain that to us is by giving us characters, and the character that unfortunately has to reprise his role throughout these thousands of years is Duncan, Idaho. And I believe he becomes our voice. He's the guy who's like, this is fucking crazy. What the fuck? Like this some shitty shit that's happening here. This ain't right. This ain't what I remember. This isn't the world that I could imagine, thousands of years ago when the Atreides were being backstabbed by the Emperor. You know what I mean? The Emperor is punching down on the Atreides. That's where he left off. And now he's like, oh wait, the Atreides are running the whole shit, and they're running it in this way that is alien to me. I think it's it's like that whole flip the world over on its head. And, I like to imagine, because we know that,
What's up?
what's his name? Oh shit, what's Aquaman's name? What the actor? I just had it. I just forgot it. Anyways, we all know that he kind of has like a comedic tone to how he likes to act. He's just, I guess, the way he's portrayed in real life, he's like a happy-go-lucky guy. And then in these movies, he likes to have fun, and he's partying, it's all good times and shit like that. So I think to have that guy try to act out the role of being like us, of trying to understand this whole new alien world that the grandchild of his leader has created thousands of years in the future, is like, it's neat, it's interesting, and I like it. You know what I mean? Like again, it's just good writing. And man, it's so cool. And I just wonder if we'll ever get that movie. You know what I mean? And what that movie is going to look like. Like what kind of because let's say we shoot the movie 10 years from now. Like Jason Momoa is going to end up being that's his name. He's going to end up being 10 years older. And but in this movie, in the story, he's going to have to be kind of the same age. He's just a reborn version of himself. And I think there is a comment later on in the story of like every version of him gets a little bit more ragged, a little more beat down, a little bit more, you know what I mean? Like it's less authentically him physically and more of like a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And it, begins to blur like genetically and everything else like that, just like a photograph or something. So I think it's very interesting that it would be very interesting to see that, to actually see that played out, because that's something that we haven't seen in a movie, you know. We've seen other versions and variations of it, but I think it's an interesting take, and it'd be interesting if that were the way that it would be done, is for Duncan Idaho to be the byline of the perspective, and what a good down to earth person. I think everyone loves Jason Momoa to play that. To play that role for us, for us to sit down in the theater and experience a story, and for him to be like, he's the all right surfs up guy, and now he's dealing with a giant worm grandchild who's older than him, and and not human anymore, and is something that's unique to the universe and has done something unique with the universe, and we gotta like try to comprehend that. It's something like a psychedelic trip almost, you know what I mean, where it's like, oh, words can't explain. Well, that's kind of what Frank Herbert is, I believe, is what he's trying to do, is to try to explain the unexplainable. And I think Jason Momoa's acting prowess, I don't know, just his take on how he takes on life and his professional career to be the thing that we get to see these stories through, potentially. It gives us something to look forward to. So the first movie hasn't even come out yet, and I'm already the second movie's getting greenlit. We're going to see that whole first book. The second book is something else. And then, the third book, I think, is everyone's favorite. And now we have this one, which is just insanity. But it picks up, where the first three books kind of left off. It's just in this whole new world. And, yeah, man, it gives me things to look forward to and gives my imagination fuel, you know what I mean? While I work on these studies and think about my world, and how can I take all this, stuff here, this information here, and then try to bend it to how I want it to work. At the same time, I'm sitting there thinking about like how other people are bending things. How is Denis Villeneuve bending the Dune books from 50 years ago to to what he thinks it is, and his interpretation of it all. And then we all get to speculate in the meantime as to what it could all end up leading to and things like that. I don't know. It's all interesting. I like this. Like, that's why I like listening to this Comic Book Girl 19 or whatever. Like, that's why I really like her takes. Again, I found her channel maybe a year or two ago when I was like researching X-Men stuff. She has a really good breakdown of the Phoenix saga, the Dark Phoenix saga with X-Men, Jean Grey, when she becomes a Dark Phoenix, and her, like, just like how she broke those few chapters down of Dune, that's how she breaks down the entire Phoenix saga, and it's a really long video, and I would definitely suggest like checking that out. I mean, even if you're not into X-Men, or just, it's good content regardless of the actual subject matter. Um, and I would say start there. And if you agree with me and you like it, well, then, she has plenty of stuff out there. Anyways, man, let's get into this dope spill comics talking about Spider-Man killing the Marvel Universe.
Spider-Man, Spider Shadow. So not only did I put it in the queue, but I pushed it to the top, man. Like we have to talk about this because this miniseries is so good. So let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so this story, much like Symbiote Spider-Man, which we covered not too long ago, this is another take that stems from Peter getting his black suit in the first Secret Wars, but this time around, in What If, we're not only going down the route if, like, Peter kept the suit, but in this case, through the writing of Chip Zdarsky, we are exploring this with a much darker twist. But also in this series, we'll be going back to around your time with like Amazing Spider-Man issue 252, when he had just returned from the first Secret Wars with a black suit, and Aunt May stopped speaking to him because he had dropped out of school. MJ called off their engagement, and he's been seeing way more Felicia since he's got back. Not to mention he has his hands full with other villains like Hobgoblin, Richard Fisk, and more. But also keep in mind that around this time, Peter was lacking sleep like crazy, and as an early part of his symbiosis, he would also experience a number of nightmares. And when we jump into What If, Spider Shadow, we start off in the middle of one of those nightmares, with him wearing the suit for a short time after returning to Earth, and him noticing that the suit physically makes him stronger, but on top of that, it's affecting his mind. And it's here in his dream where we start to see the bonding process, which comes off as a nightmare. So where he sees Felicia, he sees MJ, he sees Aunt May, and they're telling him like if he had done more, like if he had done his best, or if he was truly giving his all, then why do the people that he loved always die? Which then
Damn.
Stacy waking him up out of his dream.
Damn.
Like, the red text in his nightmares, like it has me thinking some things, but I'm not even gonna say it. I'll let you guys make your guesses in the comments, and until I'm shown differently, like I'm just gonna stick to where this is going. But with Peter having these nightmares, like he thinks it's just stress. Because for him, around this time, like we've seen before, him and Aunt May, they had their falling out. Plus, Peter has his things going on with both MJ and Felicia, so he just figures he'll put on the suit, go for a swing, and just clear his head. And while he's out thinking things over, he also notices that like when he's in the suit, that's the only time he feels better. And just as a reminder, like at this point in time, Peter truly believes that this suit is just some high-tech alien technology that he's been using this whole time. And like at night, he takes it off, much like we had seen in the original run.
Her channel is Comic Book Girl 19,
Just echoes from the suit.
I believe.
Also with him swinging around
Her name's
clear his head,
Danica
he thinks for a minute, like,
Knox
this
or
black
something. Let me
suit,
see.
It does strike fear into the hearts of villains, and it has unlimited webbing, but even still, he misses the old red and blue. And right away when he thinks of it, the suit starts changing back to a red and blue color, and it's here where he realizes that the suit can change.
Yeah, let me see. Yeah, so her YouTube channel is called Comic Book Girl 19. And she's like this kind of cosplay girl. And she's always breaking down like comic book stuff and all this other stuff. But yeah, I've really been enjoying her Dune stuff lately. Yeah, I went back and watched all the old things recently, and then now this God Emperor Dune, the fourth book, is stuff that she's doing currently. I think I even saw the stream on Twitch. I think she does it live on Twitch, and then she just edits it and then throws up, the edit onto YouTube. I believe. I might be wrong about that. She might just be doing YouTube live. Hell yeah.
This, he does go back to the black, but then he's like, I'll just keep it in mind in case I want to go back to the neighborhood friendly look. But just after this, he then hears an old lady getting mugged by a couple guys in an alley, and he jumps in to help. But when this happens, there's a bit of a switch up, because initially, though he comes in kind of joking around, his mood then quickly starts to switch from taking these guys down and joking about it, to then being like, hey, I'm tired of taking guys like you down over and over again, to where he then applies a bit more pressure than
Batman
he would
logic.
otherwise. And this is something
I'm tired of these
before,
criminals.
as far as like the classic Peter when he first got the symbiote after he came back, and there was there's this war in his mind between being dark and being good, both in his dreams and in his mind constantly, which is what we're seeing here, but just more detailed.
Whether
and
to dance the
turned up
rumba in
on
the
that.
streets or
But
not.
after helping this older lady, he just sends over a couple officers who like a block down so they can clean everything up and just take the crooks in. But after this, he figures like, okay, he's gonna try and get some actual sleep. So he goes back home and he tries to, but then the nightmares come back again. And when they do, he hears a voice asking him if he's the spider and then it just gets cut off because MJ wakes him up, and without knowing, Peter just knocks her across the room. And I'm gonna tell you right now, when I first read this, I was like, this could have been a lot worse right here. Because Peter waking up violently could have been like just an instant kill. But fortunately it wasn't. MJ's okay. But at this time, MJ came over to talk to Peter because not long before she had called everything off with Peter after Peter had gave her a ring, and she gave the ring back, initially saying that she's too free of a spirit to be tied down, and telling Peter that they could
Damn.
just be friends. But this is something that
Damn.
later turned into
I thought it would have been like, yo,
that
Spider-Man, nah.
Peter Parker and Spider-Man, they were too much for her, and that was the real reason she said no. But hey, things happen. He later met Felicia, went to Secret Wars, came back, and now she want to talk again.
Oh, of
And
course.
she doesn't know the details just yet, like we haven't gotten there. But with coming here, she's just making sure that Peter is okay. Because he's been losing a lot of sleep and acting much darker, and that's why she came by to see like what's going on. And at one point she asks about the new suit because she picks it up and it just feels weird, and all Peter tells her is like it's not from here, which is the truth at this point because that's all he really knows. But he doesn't stick around to talk to MJ. He just lets her know like, yeah, something is wrong, but I'll figure it out. And when he goes out, he remembers that he was going to let Reed Richards take a look at his suit, so he then figures that now is a better time as any. But when he starts to make his way to go see him, all of a sudden the suit is not shooting webs, and likely because the suit doesn't want to go. But with this happening, Peter just figures it's all the more reason to take it to Reed Richards, so if it needs something, he'll figure it out. But before he can go to see Reed, Peter sees an explosion in the distance, and when he goes to swing towards it to check it out, all of a sudden the suit's shooting webs again. So he's like, okay, the whole thing with Reed can wait. But when he gets there, it's the Hobgoblin, who originally was one of the first villains that Peter ran into when he got back. And I mean, like, aside from, like, Richard Fisk, The Rose, but with this following so closely to Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, Peter did run into the Hobgoblin a lot when he came back, and even before for that matter. But it didn't keep him from going to see Reed Richards. So it's like we're already seeing this parallel reality kind of veer in its own direction. But with Peter stopping to face the Hobgoblin here, it gets rough, but it ends pretty quickly. Because when the Goblin tosses a bomb, knocking Peter into the wall, he's been like, I'm really gonna miss you, like, once I've killed Spider-Man. And then Peter's like, the difference between you and me is I don't miss. And then he webs around him and hits him with a parked car. And from there, Peter just stands over him like, I'm tired of this, and I'm tired of you. And it throws the Hobgoblin off because he thinks that this guy had just crawled out of the wrong side of the web this morning. Like, he doesn't know what's going on. And while
Wrong
this is
side of the
happening,
web.
Peter hears the suit tell him to kill this guy. But instead of killing him, Peter unmasked him, which is how he finds out here that is Roderick Kingsley. And when Peter asks him why, Roderick told him it's because he wanted power. And the suit is just like scare him, and it tells Peter power through fear. And from there, Peter's like, I'll show you power, and he smacks him around a bit, but then he lets him know, like, I'm not gonna web you up or send you to jail, because if he does, this guy will be right back out like every villain ever. And when doing this, he tells Roderick to spread the word to the other villains that Spider-Man is playing for keeps now. But right after this, when Peter heads off, he then runs into Black Cat. And when he does, like, he's not really in the mood. And when she sees him and she calls him Tiger, he's like, hey, whoa, don't call me Tiger. And it's like main chick, side chick, rule number 1. Don't do that.
Oh shit.
Peter, and he doesn't say it here, but Tiger is a term of endearment that he associates with family, or those who are truly close to him. Like for MJ, she calls him Tiger, and
Yeah.
once in a blue moon, he'll even call Aunt May Tiger. And they both mean very different things in their context, but even still, it's preserved.
Damn, you won't let the cat say Tiger?
So for Felicia, he tells her just don't do that. But while he's here, he tells her that he put the hurt on Hobgoblin.
She's like, I'm a cat.
Without a message, Spider-Man can pump.
I call people Tiger.
The logic of scaring the villains so that they don't just keep coming back time after time. But after that, when he mentions that the suit was acting up, then she's like, didn't you say you're gonna get some genius guy to check it out? Who he had mentioned before, which was Reed Richards, and it's here where he tells Felicia, like, yeah, I'm gonna go to him and I'm gonna have him check it out. And when Peter goes to the Fantastic Four, like, Johnny announces his entrance in a playful way, like telling Reed, hey, Spidey's here to get his tracksuit checked out. But instead of saying something clever back,
tracksuit.
Spidey just like, shut up, Torch. And it's very different from his normal behavior. And Johnny just kind of falls back like, all alright, fine, I won't blame you no more. But when Peter gets here, Reed lets him know, like, it'll only take 30 minutes for him to check out the suit, and he asks Peter, like, is there anything unusual that he's noticed about it lately? But when he tells Reed about the things that's been going on with him, with getting less sleep and the web shooter malfunction, Peter lets Reed know that he doesn't think it's the suit because he doesn't sleep with the suit on, and when he wears the suit, he actually feels better. And when Peter lays down to get the scan, he asks Reed if he can just go ahead and get a little nap because as we've seen, he really hasn't slept all night. And Reed tells him that it's cool because it's gonna take like just
Oh,
30
he about to
minutes
find
anyway,
out.
and Reed lets him know that he'll just wake him up when he's done. But when Peter goes to sleep, the nightmares creep in once again. And this time what he sees is a countless number of people who need saving, and Aunt May in his dream telling him that sometimes you need to hurt people in order to save people. But with Peter saying that he doesn't want to do that, like he doesn't want to hurt anyone, this dark voice then tells him that he needs to, and it changes into the voice of the symbiote telling him that he needs to be strong. Once again, trying to impose the equivalent of hurting people to showing strength. But right after this, Reed wakes him up because the tests are done. And when he wakes up, he's kind of like, oh yeah, did I tell you about the nightmares? But for Reed, like after seeing the test results, he lets Spider-Man know that that would make sense because the suit is bonding to him physically and mentally, to where not only does the suit react to his thoughts, but also vice versa. And he lets him know like this suit isn't an advanced material, but it's something more like a symbiote. And it's here where we start to take an even steeper turn, because when Reed tells Spider-Man to take the suit off so they can keep it around for further
He be like,
investigation,
nah.
Peter just gets up and he starts to leave asking, is that really necessary? And he tells Reed like, no, I feel clear. This suit's alive and it has the right to make choices just like I do. And if the suit chooses to be with
Oh
me,
shit.
I'm gonna stay with it because we're helping each other. I can feel it. But as Spider-Man begins to leave, Reed reaches to stop him, but then he just turns around and crushes Reed's wrist,
Yup.
accusing Reed of being a greedy scientist and telling him that he refuses to let this living thing be locked in the prison and poked all day with a stick. And this is quite the departure from Amazing Spider-Man issue 258, to where Peter was ready to get it off, but all of a sudden he couldn't, and Reed had to reach for his sonic blaster. But then also with the suit off, Peter still needed to protect his
Classic
identity,
junkie.
both from the Fantastic Four and the rest of the world, which is when Johnny then gave him one of the old Fantastic Four suits with a paper bag for a mask and a kick me sign on the back. But in this reality with Peter telling Johnny to shut up, like a whole nother reality was created. But after Peter leaves the Fantastic Four, he then goes over to talk to his Aunt May, because they haven't talked since he's dropped out of school, so he wants to open that communication back up, but he also believes that talking to Aunt May would be a better remedy for his situation rather than having Reed or any scientist formulate a cure or solution. But when he goes to see Aunt May, he's unaware that he's being followed. But when he talks to Aunt May, he admits that he's not doing well, and he lets her know that he's aware that she's probably still mad, but lately it just feels like his head has been spinning, and he feels like she's the only person who can bring him back to his stillness. And right away she apologizes for shutting him out, but she lets him know like she just didn't like the thought of him not living up to his amazing potential. And when Peter hears this, like he gets ready to tell her that he's Spider-Man and just let everything out so she can understand, but then his spider sense goes off and Hobgoblin blows up the side of the house, and Peter's able to protect Aunt May like just in the nick of time, just before she's hit by the debris. But with the Hobgoblin following Peter here to a place he still considers to be home, Aunt May calls for Peter and Hobgoblin mocks her like, Peter, Spider Peter, save me. And Peter immediately just punches him back out into the street. And he tells the goblin, like, how dare you take this to my house? And he tells Peter, like, you started this. When you unmasked me, when
You come up in
threatened
my
me, you
house?
changed everything. You ruined the game. But Peter cuts him off and he swing kicks him into a light bulb. And from there he just starts beating the brakes off of Roderick. Like he doesn't even refer to him as Hobgoblin anymore. But then he tells Peter like it hurts when it hits home, doesn't it? And when the goblin says that, Peter then realizes that the whole time he's been out here putting the hurt on this guy, that he's left his Aunt May trapped in that burning building. So then immediately he turns around to get her, but the symbiote's like, no, don't go in the fire. It'll kill us. We can't do it.
Oh,
And
right.
back and forth with
Yeah,
the
because the symbiote can't do
a second
fire.
explosion comes from the house, knocking them both back and killing Aunt May. And when this happens, the symbiote is like, we're sorry. But then it flips and it tells Peter that he did this. And when Peter repeats after the symbiote saying he did this, referring to Hobgoblin, Peter then goes after the goblin. But at this point, like his process of symbiosis, it has physically changed him again to an appearance that is way more terrifying. And the first thing he does from here is just web the Hobgoblin up. And Hobgoblin tries to plead to him like, you started this. And Peter just responds like, I'm going to finish it. And when he does this, he does like the slow, menacing walk. towards him. And he thinks to himself again, like, no matter what he does, people either get hurt or people die. And now, with leading into what the symbiote said about hurting people to show strength, he then grabs Hobgoblin's head and just crushes it, saying that now that he has the power, he's going to use it. And it's a crazy dark flip on Uncle Ben's old saying, with great power comes great responsibility, to where now the symbiote's got him more or less saying, like, with great power comes great hurt. Alright, so jumping back in, like just after Peter had killed the Hobgoblin, it's here we see a symbiosis evolve both physically and mentally. And for the physical side, we see it as a more menacing look, but for the mental side, which started off looking like nightmares, but at this point they just turned into conversation between Peter and the symbiote. Because on both ends, the more harmonious they get, the less turbulence we see in the representation of the symbiosis. But it's here while he's having a conversation with the symbiote to where Peter brings up that the old saying from Uncle Ben, with great power comes great responsibility, to where Peter thinks he's been seeing it wrong this whole time. And when talking to the symbiote, Peter believes that he has power and he believes that he has a responsibility to save people and to keep them safe. But with the way that he's been doing things before, he hasn't been keeping them safe. And with the whole cycle of sending supervillains to prison so they can go there for vacation and then just plan their next plot, but then when they get out, like those plans only lead to people getting killed. Whether it's Gwen Stacy and her father.
Yeah, it's the whole Batman trope.
About with symbiote Spider-Man, but Peter sees this all as the same, whether it was
Hell yeah, Spider-Man going Batman.
or even his Uncle Ben when he let that robber get away. But like we had seen before, Peter believes that it's his responsibility to stop these villains before they're allowed to continue to kill more people. And it's here where the symbiote then brings it all back, telling Peter that it was his responsibility, but now it's our responsibility. And it's crazy because it's not just the process of symbiosis, but it's like this whole process of justification, really. Because the symbiote is leading Peter to believe that things live, things die, like this is a part of nature. And the symbiote just adds on to the justification, telling Peter that these villains have essentially forfeit their right to life. Like, it's nuts. Cold world, symbiote. But even with Peter feeling this way and leaning into this dark mindset, like he doesn't want Mary Jane to find out, and he doesn't want people to think that he's a murderer. But then he walks past the newsstand, and he's on the front page of the paper from the Daily Bugle that showed that he was spotted murdering Roger Kingsley. And you can tell right away that that's not going to sit well. But after this, we then
Gave him an
over to
excuse.
Fisk, who's reading the paper, which reads that an eyewitness saw Spider-Man fighting the Hobgoblin, and with doing this, at one point, Spider-Man just snapped. Like, those were the words of the eyewitness. But with seeing this, Wilson Fisk, he realizes that this is a problem. Because his criminal organization, it can handle a 5% loss because of your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. But with this new Spider-Man straight ending criminals, Fisk now realizes that Spider-Man is eventually going to come for him. And because of that, he tells James Wesley to make some calls, because from his perspective, this new Spider-Man's got to go. But after this, we then go over to the Daily Bugle, where Jameson is pretty much shouting from the rooftops that he's been right this whole time. And at this point, he's just telling Robbie, who used to be one of the Daily Bugle's lead journalists, and I'm not sure if that's the case at this point, but Jameson's just telling him how he missed it, and Jameson trusts his own gut. And he had known this because he had a gut feeling about it. But as Jonah gets to type his next headline, which is Spider Manslaughter, but as soon as he sits down, he looks up and Spider-Man just jumps through the window. And when he gets there, Jonah's like, Robbie, call the police, we just had a murderer break in, and at this point, Spider-Man just like, do it. I don't care. And he pins Jonah to the wall and then crushes his left hand. And he lets Jonah know, like, this is exactly what you wanted, isn't it? And he tells him, like, even prior to now, all Spider-Man has done is clean up the city and help people. But when he's talking to Jonah and destroying that man's hand, Robbie tries to make his way to the door, but Spider-Man just webs the mess out of that guy. But then he yanks Jonah off of the wall by his broken hand, just insult to injury. And he lets Jonah know, like, we both got what we want. With Spider-Man being the criminal that Jonah always said that he was, but with doing it, he's figured out a way to help more people. But before he leaves, he tells Jonah, like, if he sees one more article about Spider-Man from the Daily Bugle, he's gonna come back and break the other hand.
Oh, shit.
We then go back to the Fantastic Four, to where Ben and Reed, they're looking at the results that Reed ran on Spider-Man while Johnny's flying around trying to find him. But with looking at
See, man, this is the Venom that I love.
he says that it's only a matter of time.
This is why Venom's one of my faves.
Bonds with Spider-Man. And because of that,
Not only just a badass design, but it's just a wild, man.
But there is no sign of Spider-Man anywhere. And it really has them nervous because the clock is ticking and Spider-Man is quickly reaching the point of no return. But after this, we then go over to Peter's apartment to where MJ's let herself in, once again. But she's come here to check on him because she hasn't seen him since Aunt May's funeral. He's not answering his phone, plus she's seen the headline of the Daily Bugle. But when she gets there and she makes her way to Peter's bedroom, and I gotta tell you, like, just the way the Pascal Fairy just has it just looks brilliant. Because with Peter sleeping in midair with the symbiote just lashed onto the walls, and the symbiote's also supporting his back. And so there's that. But it also just has this horror element, like MJ had just walked in on Dracula sleeping. And she wakes him up, he tells her, like, look, I know it looks weird.
This shit look crazy, right?
But you gotta believe me, like, it is extremely comfortable. But as we know, that's not the reason that she came here. Because right away she asked Peter about what she'd seen in the paper, and she wants to know from him directly, like, is it true? And when she asks him, Peter, he doesn't say anything immediately. But then he goes on to explain to MJ that because of who he is and what he's capable of doing, he has to make a decision whether to let someone like the Hobgoblin live at the cost of an Aunt May. And he tells her it's not a decision that everybody can handle. And he lets her know because of his power, he's one of the people who have to make that decision. And from there, he just takes off, telling her that he's finally going to make that call. But also with him taking off, like, he can't stand the fact that MJ knows about all this. So once again, there's a bit of logic and a bit of conscience still eating away
Oh
at
shit.
it. But
See
not
where this
long
is
after he
going.
leaves, his spider sense goes off and he's attacked. And from here, man, it's go time. Because when his spider sense goes off and he barely dodges this blast, he then looks to see where it came from, and it's the shocker. And man, I gotta tell you, like, as soon as I seen it, it was the shocker. Every shocker in every reality needs to avoid a symbiote Spider-Man at all costs. But with the shocker coming after Peter, like, he knows that this guy, he just wouldn't do it alone. And his hero Scorpion then tries to blitz him. And then Peter's like, okay, this makes more sense. Scorpion's a little bit more dangerous. But essentially what these guys are doing here, they're calling his bluff. And they were definitely sent here by Wilson Fisk, but even still with that being the case, and them seeing the headlines in the paper, they've been toe-to-toe with Spider-Man before, and with them just seeing him wearing black now, like, they're not buying it. But when Scorpion expresses this, like, you expect us to believe you gone bad? Like, you think you just ends this guy. And from there, he just walks over to Shocker, who's shocked. And he's over there just slumped like a horror movie, like, this can't be life. But when this happens, it's quickly that Shocker realizes that Wilson Fisk was right, and that everything he had heard about Spider-Man turning into your friendly neighborhood murderer, like, it was the truth. But when he tries to go for like a surprise blast on Peter, Peter just dodges it very nonchalant, allowing it to hit the building behind him. And once again, to point out some of the non-Peter-like attributes of this,
Yeah, people get hurt.
Tried to help the mother and her kid. And as it turns out, like, the mother and her child, they're okay. Like, the mom gets scuffed up a bit, but in any other scenario, Peter would have helped them out, either catching the debris with some webs or just pulling them out of the way. But that's just not the case here, because Peter, he pays it no mind, and he goes over to Shocker, to whom the last thing we heard him say was Fisk was right. Which then takes us over to Wilson Fisk, who's lounging in his condo reading the biggest book I've ever seen, because he's big already. Like, this guy with the Barnes & Noble was talking about, let me get that in the large. But it's not long after we see him here that Peter shows up, and Peter is dropping off limbs left and right. But with Peter finding Fisk here, like, Wilson Fisk was waiting for him. But he didn't expect him to be back, like, this quick. But when he gets there, Fisk tells him, like, he had did some research. Because when he saw that Spider-Man had murdered the Hobgoblin, he had also noticed the woman that died in that fire was May Parker. So Fisk then figured, like, for her death to get such a reaction out of Spider-Man, they had to be close. So from there, the closest match to someone who lined up with Spider-Man's stature was Peter Parker. And after that, Fisk then looked to see if he had any other close family members so he could threaten, but he didn't find anyone. Not a wife, not a girlfriend, no one. And so when Fisk starts to tell him how sad that is, Peter then sends his mouth through the back of his head, adding another body to the list. And I can't say that I want to see Wilson Fisk catch a brutality, but I will say that I've grown tired of seeing this big human being with no powers go toe-to-toe with Spider-Man. Like, stop it. That's cap. And even prior to
That's
this,
cap.
the argument can be made that Peter has always been pulling his punches, and that's why Fisk has gotten the upper hand before. But I will counter that with the argument of if you are an enhanced being who can catch a vehicle and sit it back down, then you would also be physically capable of one-punching any human. And miss me with all that physical peak human stuff, because you're still human. But after this, we then go over to the Sinister Six, and they've taken notice that Spider-Man has killed Hobgoblin, Scorpion, the Shocker, and now Wilson Fisk. And prior to now, like Wilson Fisk, he did give these guys the invitation or solicitation to take down Spider-Man and get paid. But Craven told these guys to hold back because if they rushed in there like Shocker and Scorpion, then they would have got bodied too. And at this point, Mysterio's saying that they still need to lay low, but Craven is like, no, we gotta band together and we gotta strike at once. But what I think is interesting here is that this is the beginning of the new Sinister Six. Or at least that's what Otto calls them. And it's here where we get the big reveal of who the sixth member is when Otto Octavius tells them that only one of us has seen this new Spider-Man up close. And then right after that, we get this reveal that the sixth member of this group, of the new Sinister Six in this story, and it's J. Jonah Jameson. And right after that, Jameson, he admits that he doesn't like working with these guys. And sure, he believes that each and every one of them should be locked up behind bars, but Spider-Man is way more dangerous than any of these guys. And it's Jameson who has been right about Spider-Man. Like, he's willing to do what he needs to do to stop this guy. But after this, he gives Craven the go to get things started as far as drafting up a plan, because the hunt is his expertise. So he tells Craven to make a plan and get back to himself and the others, because at this point, with his own resources, Otto has no eyes on Spider-Man. But then it's here one of his men standing behind him by the screen, like he suggests that they do something to lure Spider-Man out. But Otto just brushes this guy off. He tells him, like, I don't pay you to think, and he gives these guys the orders to go arm the other men, because after the new Sinister Six is done with Spider-Man, he wants to be ready to take care of the other villains, because he doesn't trust them. But then when the same guy doesn't go with the others to arm the men and get them ready, Otto doesn't even look at him, but he asks him, like, did I make myself clear? And then the dude just stabs Otto in the back, because this whole time it was Eddie Brock. And this was a twist that I did not expect. But when he does this, he lets Otto know that he's not gonna let him kill Spider-Man, because that's his job. Alright, so let's jump back in. Previously, we had seen the reassembling of the Sinister Six, which in this case
Eddie Brock getting gangster before the suit.
Being no Vulture in this case, but instead the addition of J. Jonah Jameson, who had allied himself with these villains after being assaulted by Spider-Man and just desperate to stop Spider-Man by any means necessary. But with moving forward, Otto Octavius, who's the traditional leader of the Sinister Six, he called for Craven to craft a plan because that's Craven's place of expertise. But then out of the blue, Otto Octavius is stealth attacked by Eddie Brock, who refuses to let anyone else kill Spider-Man.
So Sony, sorry, I'm pausing that for a second, just to, they're talking about Craven. Dude, the Sony game show, whatever, exposition, whatever that was that Sony did yesterday, where they revealed a bunch of stuff coming up. And Insomniac Games, the ones who gave us the Spider-Man video games and the Miles Morales patch and all that other stuff. Dude, they're working on a second Spider-Man, and they got Venom in it, which is gonna be insane. And then they also have I believe that was Kraven the Hunter, which is something that I've been waiting for the longest time. I love the idea of Kraven the Hunter, like his character, the idea behind his character and everything like that. I love that shit. I love the fact that there's a guy out there who's just like, yeah, I've hunted everything. I'm kind of bored of hunting everything. And now here we have Spider-Man, who's, something like a man, but something like an animal. He's like a giant spider, essentially. He's like, yeah, that's going to be my jam. That's what I'm going to go hunt now. Like, I love the idea of that. He's like, I'm going to put all my hunting expertise into getting Spider-Man. And then, like, just where that idea would have to go in order to make it viable. Where Kraven the Hunter is more than just, like, Elmer Fudd, but he's, like, an actual threat to Spider-Man, who's taken out Rhino, Shocker, Green Goblin, Hobgoblin. Like, but at least in this video game world, there is no, Venoms out there, which I wonder how they're going to tackle that, because, you always got to wonder how much, like, the movies have already deviated so much, because the original source of Venom was that it was, the symbiote suit, which is everything that we're listening to about this comic right now, is like Spider-Man bonds with this symbiote, and it slowly kind of turns him bad. And then, uh, after Peter Parker's like, oh, fuck this suit, I gotta get it off of me no matter how good it makes me feel. Like, he's like, drop the syringe, basically. And then Eddie Brock and the symbiote both bond together through their hatred of Peter, and that's how we get Venom. And Venom, is ultimately one of the most badass characters out there because he has all the powers of Spider-Man plus the power of the symbiote plus, rocking off the hatred of Eddie Brock, who's which I never know how to feel about Eddie Brock just because it's like he's just a reporter. Like, go check your news channel, look at reporters, and be like, yeah, they're just people. So why Eddie Brock is like super swole, like never made sense to me. Like, why is there this jacked reporter out there? Um, I guess like a way to kind of okay it would be like maybe he starts off as a regular person, but through all the symbiosis, um, he ends up like becoming a jacked person just because he's always wearing the suit, something like that. And at that point he's not a reporter anymore. At that point he's just a villain. He's just an alien. Um, yeah, but I don't know. But either way, I always loved Venom. But it never had anything to do with Eddie Brock. just the you know, just a bad guy who's like kind of like Spider-Man, but like not like Spider-Man. He's in my top three. It's Venom, Gambit, and Nightcrawler. They're my top three, like characters. But yeah, Insomniac Games, giving us Venom, one of my top three, and then Kraven the Hunter, someone who you know, I want to see them done right. I remember they were saying like Keanu Reeves might have gone to play Kraven the Hunter at some point. Like when people were just spitballing ideas, like Sinister Six ideas in the movies and stuff like that. Um, would I don't really have any ideas for who would play him, but Keanu Reeves would be cool. But just to have him be done right. Um, have a hunter done in a way that's like, oh my god, this person, with traps and bullets and a concrete jungle is an actual threat to Spider-Man who can uppercut Hulk into outer space. Like, like to see that done, like to see an Elmer Fudd story that he actually beats Bugs Bunny at the end or something like that, I think would be super, super cool. But yeah, Insomniac Games giving that to us. Oh my god, how cool is that? And then they announced the Wolverine video game that they've been, that's I'm sure is in the beginning of development, where it's like, you know, I imagine that was what we saw was probably their pitch to Sony to be like, hey, or maybe their pitch to Marvel. Like, I don't even know who owns what anymore. But it was probably just their pitch. Like they probably just put that together and be like, "Hey, we did Spider-Man 2 coming soon, but look what else we did." And they're like, "Schnicked," and it's like, "Oh shit, like, man, dude." There was a Wolverine game in the PS2 era. I forget if it was called like Wolverine Origins or something. It was around the time of the movies like X2 or maybe X3, where there was like PlayStation 2 was in its heyday, and they had a Wolverine video game. And dude, you got to fight like Deathstrike. Magneto was one of the most awesome boss battles ever because it was like a powered down Magneto, so they could make it make sense to fight Wolverine. But it all played a part, like it all made sense. You fought Juggernaut, I think like Omega Red and stuff like that. And it's just that was one of my favorite video games. I went back and I watched it recently, like watched a bit of a playthrough to try to like reminisce a little. It does not hold up well. But there were still like some cool ideas. Like I said, I think that Magneto one, because obviously it's like, oh, Magneto versus Wolverine, he'll just magnetize him to death. And it's like, yeah, maybe, or you could use a little bit of the power of imagination to try to imagine a scenario in which it isn't such an obvious thing. But yeah, it's fucking Wolverine game, dog. That's gonna be so dope. And it looks like they may take it in a direction like they did with Spider-Man, where it'd be cool. Wolverine's one of my favorite characters. I mean, it's a lot of people's favorite character, but just like everything else, like I like the ideas more than I like what's actually been done for the character. Like I think there's so much more potential, which is why I started writing my own stories because I'll never get to make them like for Marvel or anything like that. Like they don't want me. So it's like I started writing my own and then I just like didn't name it Wolverine. So it's like, okay, I got my Wolverine story in the tuck now and I'm going to go tell it eventually. I haven't gotten around to that character yet. But oh boy, when I do, I can't fucking wait.
That takes us over to the meetup between J. Jonah Jameson and the other members of the new Sinister Six, who at this point are prepared to
Buff alien slime monster.
at this
Hell yeah.
location. And when Jameson gets there, like, for one, they didn't think he was going to follow through. But then on top of that, they also didn't think that Spider-Man was going to try to kill all the villains. But also when Jameson gets here and he approaches Rhino, Electro, Mysterio, and Kraven, he's then met by the final new member of the Sinister Six, Brock Ock, who had not only discarded Otto Octavius, but he had taken
Brock
his
Ock.
arms and attached them to himself. And with seeing this, like, I hope he cleaned that thing off, because I can't imagine that it still has, like, Otto Octavius' back sweat and hair still on it. But anyway. But like when Jameson seeing Eddie Brock, he immediately recognizes him. Because it's like, hey, you're that reporter who got fired from the Globe. But then on top of that, he's shocked and surprised because this dude is wearing Doc Ock's arms. And when Jameson asks, like, where's Octavius? Right away, Eddie lets him know Octavius isn't showing up. And on top of that, Eddie tells
like,
him,
yeah,
like,
about that Octavius guy.
Because Spider-Man destroyed his life. And with Eddie seeing it that way with himself as the victim, he asks Jameson, like, what is a normal guy supposed to do against that monster, Spider-Man? And Eddie tells Jameson, like, if anyone knows the answer to that question, like, you definitely do. To where in this case, he's definitely referring to Jameson's recent visit from the not-so-friendly neighborhood of Spider-Man as like your exhibit A of a regular person versus what this guy's become. And when Eddie says this, Jameson, like, he doesn't argue the point, but he does ask everyone else there, like, if they're okay with this, and across the board, there's really no complaints. Raven on one hand, he's kind of like, well, the more the merrier, which is really kind of weird because you lost the guy in game one, so you kind of had the same number. But also, Rhino mentions that he doesn't mind because Otto had always looked down on him, and for that reason, he really doesn't miss the bowl cut bandit. But after this, when Jameson looks around, he's kind of like, okay, like, so this is where we're gonna do it. And when he says that, we also get this moment where Mysterio's like, it's okay, Jonah, you can say it, but this is where we're killing Spider-Man. And with seeing Mysterio say that, I felt like it was a very chilling moment. Like, it was a nice addition to see Mysterio trying to get Jameson to lean into what they're about to do. But then also Mysterio goes on to tell Jameson that they're doing this out here because if they do it in the city, they absolutely run the risk of other heroes getting involved and things.
Yeah, something that doesn't ever get brought up enough. Man, where are we at? How long have I? It's got to be like at least an hour, right? Hell yeah, 90 minutes. That's a solid stream. Yeah, I wish I could. I wonder if I have my Brock card. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can find my Brock sketch card that I did. It's one of my favorite pieces that I've done. Not only do I love Venom, but I did a sketch card of him years ago, and I was like, ooh, I like this. I'd like to take this idea and run with it. And I did. I've made up my own character, but it's also not named Venom. Alright, old sketch cards. Old sketch cards time. I think a lot of these are like the printed copies of some old stuff. Yeah, these are from 2016. 2016. Anyone who's gone to my Patreon will recognize my One Punch Man stuff. Are these the originals? No, these are printed copies as well. I wonder if I even have... Oh yeah, my originals are in a frame somewhere. Oh shit. I think this was Rogue One, the blind guy. Fucking loved it so much. I was gonna do something with it and just never did. Are we blurry? Or is my sketch just blurry? And there we go. But yeah, it was, I forget his name. Was it like Jinmei or some shit? Old sketch cards, 2015. Here's a Yakuza Joker. Luffy going Tank Man for the first time, 2000. Oh, and there's my Venom sketch. Is this the original? It's the original too. Fuck yeah, man. I did this at a convention back in 2016. I lost the stamp. I gotta, like, it's gotta be somewhere in my, like in my stuff that's all boxed up. But now that I'm like open for commissions and things like that, I always like to stamp them with that. It's just my name. I think it's in Chinese. But yeah, I always loved this. I was taking this, and this is when I was like starting to experiment with things that I like, but implementing them into other things that I like, and just like kind of merging concepts and ideas of like Venom and Japanese demons and things like that. But yeah, I also enjoyed this one just because I primarily like primary colors, you know, red, yellow, blue, things like this. Like, it always looks good to me. And this is one that I pulled off with green, purple, and orange, you know, like secondary colors. And yeah, something that, you know, I wasn't often doing back then, you know, just because those always remind me of like Halloween or scary stuff. And I was like, oh man, you know, I just never really liked the colors. And whenever I see them done well, it really stands out to me. And yeah. I think this is also one that has like secondary lighting. Like, I think like the green, I was trying to tackle some secondary lighting. Like, this is old. 2016, was that 5 years ago? So yeah, 5 years ago, I was still trying to learn all this stuff. Just inking, really struggling with markers and all this other stuff. But yeah, I really like this one. This is one of my favorites. But yeah, that's just the, since we're talking about Black Suit Spider-Man, or listening to a Black Suit Spider-Man thing. Yeah. For some October art challenges, yep. Yeah, that was the thing about it, man. I love the thing that I did is that he's so twisted and demented at this point that his eyes are shooting off in different directions, you know? It was something that I seen in this movie called Wrath of the Ninja. It was an animated. It's also called the Yotodon Tales in Japanese. And yeah, there's demons in there where their eyes don't go forward, like they shoot off to the sides. And that's always like stood out to me when it's like, oh, okay, anytime you do something like you want something to not look human, like it's kind of like deranged in a way. And then yeah, just it's funny how much shooting their eyes off to the side is like an instant, oh, this is a monster. It's like they're not present, they're not here, they're just some meatsicle that's here to do work. You know, probably there to fuck shit up. But yeah, get his eyes going. But yeah, I always saw this and was like, man, I'd love to like push this idea and go more with it. And then obviously this would have been like right before I started writing, when I took all those years off of art. and then started like writing the stories and things like that. And then I created my own something like a Venom character. And oh my god, like I said, this guy's in my top 3 of my favorite characters. So you better believe like I have a character for this, and I wrote him and I gave him, you know, looks nothing like him, has nothing, none of the story. It was just like derivative of him, and then I just made it my own at that point, and now it's like this badass thing. I can't wait to draw it, design it for y'all to see it, and then ultimately get around to like telling the story and having them there, because it's you know, this guy being something of an anti-hero, it's a bit of a bittersweet character. So yeah. But yeah, that's funny that this was 5 years ago, which would have been around the time that I stopped doing art and to start writing. So yeah, the ideas were really getting to me at that point. But anyways, that was a little bit of reminiscing. That's going to be the end of this episode. And I want to thank y'all for watching. Thanks for stopping by. Nardachi. Hell yeah. Yeah, symbiotes are the best, man. And it's funny, I don't really like, I like Carnage and stuff like that. I'm looking forward to Woody Harrelson. I think he'll probably be the best Carnage ever, but Carnage never got me the same as Venom, which is weird. You know, and all the other symbiotes, and now like the history and story of them has been expanded to like Null the Conqueror and all that stuff, and you know the Necrosword and all that other stuff is, you know, it's like it's cool, but it's not Venom. Like I just love me some Venom. But anyways, I'm getting out of here. I'll be back tomorrow for another stream. We're gonna do another grenade launcher. This one's gonna look a little bit more, little more proper, little more straight up. It's, you know, recognizable with the little barrel ammo and all this other stuff. So yeah, we'll get to that one tomorrow. Other than that, G Mr. Drew on all socials. Follow, like, and subscribe. gmrdrew.art, my website. Check it out. Contact me through there for anything like that. And yeah, man, thank y'all for watching. Love y'all. Peace.